The hall of House Ryam had never witnessed such charged silence. Yet on this day, every noble of the stellar court held stillness, as if movement might fracture the fragile alliance being negotiated. And at the center of that vast chamber stood the Princess Leora, who possessed a presence as luminous as the crystal sigils that adorned the high walls, while she waited for the delegation from Earth, led not by an ambassador or royal envoy, but by a single soldier named Daniel, who walked forward with the quiet confidence of someone who had survived a lifetime of trials and now carried the weight of 2 civilizations on his shoulders. Leora had been trained since childhood to mask every flicker of emotion beneath layers of discipline, for her people valued composure as a sign of strength and clarity. Yet as Daniel approached, she felt a pulse of unfamiliar warmth ripple through her chest, and she forced her hands to remain steady at her sides, while her breath gathered in slow measured draws, because the moment she saw him, her expectations of humans shifted in an instant. Daniel stepped onto the glimmering platform that separated the princess from the visiting parties, and even though he wore no ceremonial armor, the simplicity of his uniform seemed to radiate an honesty she rarely encountered among the heirs of neighboring worlds, and she found herself studying the way he moved with purposeful ease, as if no grandeur could shake his balance. The court watched with sharp curiosity as Daniel bowed in respect before the princess, and his voice carried across the hall in a clear tone when he introduced himself as a soldier chosen, not for titles, but for the belief that peace required those who understood the cost of conflict, and his words resonated through Leora with unexpected strength. Though Leora had stood through countless diplomatic receptions, she had never felt her composure tested like this. For each time Daniel met her gaze, she sensed no fear of her lineage, nor awe of her station, but a calm recognition of her as a person, rather than a symbol, and this simple difference unsettled her more than any political threat she had faced. The elders of the court began their formal inquiries, yet Leora barely processed the ritual questions, because her focus drifted to Daniel, who responded with steady conviction each time he was asked to clarify the intentions of Earth, while his sincerity softened many of the rigid stances that had defined earlier negotiations. She noticed how Daniel listened without interruption, how he paused before speaking as though weighing every word, not to impress, but to convey truth. And her heartbeat quickened, despite her attempt to control it, because the more she observed him, the more she realized she had underestimated humanity. Even when the chamber transitioned into strategic discourse about trade routes, shared frontiers, and defense pacts, Daniel maintained a humble composure that contrasted sharply with the posturing of many interstellar envoys, and Leora felt a flicker of admiration grow within her, despite her ongoing internal battle to maintain serenity. When the council break was called, Leora stepped down from her high dais, intending to retreat to her private chamber to regain balance. Yet her path intersected with Daniel near the central lift, where he paused respectfully to allow her to pass. And the moment they stood within arm's length, she felt her breath catch, as though her internal rhythm faltered. Daniel greeted her again with quiet earnestness, and though his tone remained formal, there was a softness within it that disarmed her, prompting her to respond with a rare candidness that surprised even herself as she asked if the journey from Earth had been difficult, a question she would normally delegate to attendants, but felt compelled to ask directly. He told her of the long voyage, the star lines that pulsed like rivers of radiant glass outside the transport windows, and the hope that this meeting might lead to a stronger bond between their worlds. And as he spoke, she realized he possessed a kind of courage shaped not by pride but by compassion, a trait she found far harder to shield herself against. Leora felt her composure slipping again when Daniel thanked her for welcoming him personally, and though she attempted to respond with the poised dignity expected of her station, a faint tremor passed through her voice, which she hoped he had not noticed, yet the gentle understanding in his eyes made her suspect otherwise. Before she could retreat fully to safety, Daniel asked if he could pose a question, and his request carried no presumption, only genuine curiosity, and she granted permission out of both courtesy and an unspoken desire to understand him better, prompting him to ask what she truly thought of humanity beyond the reports drafted by her advisors. Her answer emerged with unusual sincerity, as she admitted that she had expected humans to be brash or unpredictable due to historical accounts of their struggles and rapid expansion. Yet meeting him had challenged those assumptions and reminded her that individuals could reflect far more than the stereotypes assigned to their civilizations. Daniel responded with appreciation and expressed his own view that many on Earth still understood their capacity for growth through humility and cooperation. And hearing him speak with such grounded honesty caused another ripple of warmth through her, as if a veil had been lifted from her perception. Their brief exchange was interrupted when attendants summoned Leora back to the council chamber for the next session. Yet as she walked away, she felt Daniel's presence linger like a steady pulse, and her mind raced with thoughts she struggled to suppress. From maintaining composure had become more challenging than she had anticipated. Throughout the second half of negotiations, Leora found herself acutely aware of Daniel stationed behind the Earth delegation's table, where he observed with attentive silence, and whenever she glanced in his direction, she felt a subtle shift within her that she attempted repeatedly to conceal, though her father, seated beside her, raised an eyebrow more than once, as if sensing her unrest. When the council reached a critical impasse regarding mutual defense responsibilities, Daniel rose to offer a perspective that bridged the divide between both sides, speaking not as a strategist, but as someone who had witnessed the consequences of fear-driven decisions, and his calm reasoning began to thaw the rigid stances that had blocked progress. Leora felt something stir within her as the council slowly aligned around Daniel's proposal, because she realized that he had not only strengthened the foundation for peace, but had done so with an authenticity rare among warriors of any species. And she struggled to hide the pride that welled within her at his accomplishment, though she reminded herself that such emotion was inappropriate for someone of her station. When the treaty draft reached final review, the elder of House Ryam commended Daniel's contribution, which prompted the entire hall to acknowledge him. And though the recognition was formal, Daniel responded with modest restraint, while Leora felt her heart tighten with admiration that threatened her carefully maintained poise. After the council concluded, Leora approached Daniel once more, driven by a mixture of duty and a quieter feeling she dared not name, and she thanked him for the role he played in solidifying the alliance. Her voice steadier now, though her pulse remained unsteady beneath the surface. Daniel expressed gratitude for the honor of serving in such a pivotal moment, and told her that meeting her had reaffirmed his belief that peace was possible between vastly different worlds. And his sincerity struck her again with a force she could not fully mask, as she found herself momentarily unable to form the usual composed reply. She recovered quickly, but the warmth in her voice did not escape his attention, and though he said nothing about it, she sensed he recognized her struggle and treated it not as weakness, but as a sign of genuine connection, which only deepened the internal conflict she had been battling since the moment he entered the hall. As they walked together toward the grand exit, Leora felt a profound shift within herself, for she realized that Daniel represented not only the potential unity of their people, but the possibility of understanding that transcended the rigid divisions imposed by their histories, and she fought to maintain outward serenity, even as her emotions swelled more fiercely than ever. When they finally reached the towering threshold, Daniel paused and offered a quiet farewell, his steady gaze holding respect and something gentler beneath it, and Leora felt the familiar training of composure strained to contain the unspoken truth rising within her, for this human soldier had reshaped her perception of what strength and sincerity could be. As Daniel departed through the radiant corridor, Leora remained still for a long moment, while the steady hum of palace energy vibrated around her, and she admitted silently that meeting him had unsettled her in ways she had never anticipated for. He had revealed something she had long buried beneath her royal discipline, a longing for connection, rooted not in duty, but in shared courage and truth. For the first time in many years, the princess allowed a quiet smile to form, a smile she ensured no court official witnessed, for she understood now that her struggle for composure had been the clearest sign that the alliance meant more to her than political stability. And though she was not ready to voice such feelings, she knew this meeting had marked the beginning of a new era for her and for both their worlds. And as the echoes of Daniel's footsteps faded into the distance, Leora resolved to meet the future with the same courage he had shown, trusting that the bond formed in this first encounter would guide them toward a path Shaw